Join us in a moment. Now, I think amongst us today there'll be two types of people. Those that will pick food up from the floor when it's been dropped, and those that will say that's gone, that's never to be eaten again. Can we have a hand of those that, you know, we have the 3-second rule. It's a rule, isn't it? For some reason, we can blow it off and magically all germs and bacteria just go, and we think that's good, we'll take it. Put your hand up if that's you. Excellent. I love that. Okay. I am one of those people. Admittedly, I've been in the cinema and the person in front has dropped their whole bucket of popcorn on the floor in front, and I'm looking at it thinking, well, that one's not even touched the floor. There's a whole... I could easily say, that's fine. It'll make sense why I brought that up. I had loads of stories, even, you know, with mums as well. Food that comes out of the baby's mouth, they'll scoop it up and go, well, yeah. Or wipe it off a child. Yeah, that's even worse. How about, would you, if it fell from someone else's plate, maybe at a barbecue, and rolled onto the floor, would you pick it up and eat it? Oh, no, neither would I. Neither would I. Okay. We're continuing the record of Jesus' movements after he's been in the Sea of Galilee. He's walked on water, he's fed 5,000, he's done all sorts of miracles, healed people, set people free from demonic oppression. And we're picking up a story in Mark 7, 24-37. And it goes like this. And from there he rose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house and did not want anyone to know. Yet he could not be hidden. Immediately, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth. And she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, for this statement you may go on your way. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. Then he returned from the region of Tyre in the north and went further north to Sidon, to the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment. And they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put 2 fingers into his ears, and after spitting, he touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephatha, that is, be opened. And his ears were opened, and his tongue was released. And he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged them to tell no one. But the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, he has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So I'm just going to pull out 4 things from this passage, which I think we can learn from this quite peculiar interaction, to be fair. The first thing is, come quickly to Jesus. Now, Jesus had been traveling for a long time to the region of Tyre, from the Sea of Galilee. I think it was probably taken on for maybe 1 or 2 days. He was exhausted. He was trying to find maybe a back alley just to put his head down and relax and be away from the crowds for a moment. He already pulled up a cushion and was about to put his head on there just to rest. And then immediately a woman came and fell at his feet. She found out where he was. Maybe it was the disciples that gave it away. They were loitering outside the house or something. But anyway, this woman found out where Jesus was, and it says immediately went to him. She spent no time. And actually for her to go to Jesus, there were a few barriers that she had to cross. She was a woman. In that time, it wasn't the done thing. It was a little bit socially inappropriate for the woman to approach her man. She was also, it says here that she's a Gentile, which is a non-Jew. Again, would have been not necessarily the regular thing for a woman to approach a Jewish rabbi, a Gentile approaching a Jewish rabbi. And I want to say, put aside every barrier and come and find Jesus. Put aside every barrier and come and find Jesus. Like Liam did, he thought, I'm going to look in the Bible. A Bible is a great place to start. I believe Jesus is on every page. You'll see Jesus in that. I believe going to a church where they read from the Bible, where they're spirit-filled, hopefully they will be able to show you to Jesus and introduce you to Jesus. But go quickly. Don't have any excuses. Whether they're social, inappropriate, you feel awkward, whether they're cultural, whether you're breaking religious norms, quickly come to Jesus. I've learnt in all relationships that are worth going for, you're either becoming increasingly engaged with that person or actually disengaged with that person. There's no kind of neutral ground. You're either moving forward, you're becoming more connected with someone, or you're becoming more disconnected with someone. Does that make sense? I'd say move forward, move quickly. Don't disconnect or disengage with Jesus. That's my first point. Come quickly to Jesus. Secondly, recognize him as the bread of life. This woman saw that there was something that was going to nourish her soul. Now, in this passage, we see Jesus' sort of quite harsh reply to the woman, saying, "Let the children be fed first, for it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." Harsh. And actually, Jesus was trying to explain that his priority on his earthly mission was the people of Israel, the children of Israel. He was going to see them saved. But actually, through this extraordinary story, we see that he dramatically demonstrates that his good news is for everyone. His good news is for everyone throughout the world. And his challenge to her, rather than her disengaging, she came closer. She drew on depths of faith, which were extraordinary. Depths of faith in just a few crumbs from the hand of Jesus. She felt that was enough to heal her daughter. And this compares actually to the lack of faith of the disciples, the ones that were with Jesus, following him. You remember the stories, if you were here a few weeks ago, but you probably know this story anyway. Feeding of the 5,000, their lack of faith. Matthew's account of that story, he says, the disciple says, "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Compared to the crumbs, that's quite a lot. It appears Jesus is trying to kind of use this situation to challenge his followers and his disciples and say, look at this woman, look at the contrast in this woman compared to your faith. He kind of really, Jesus is often harsh with his followers actually. In the next chapter, they still haven't learnt the lesson after this encounter with this woman, because there's the feeding of the 4,000 I'm going into next week, but that's the chapter next week, I believe. And it's feeding the 4,000, and they still don't understand. And so Jesus says to them, after this feeding of the 4,000, well, they're kind of arguing about bread. He says, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" 12, they replied. Welcome back, Liam. Quietly come in, no one noticed. "And when I broke 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" They answered, 7. He said to them, "Do you still not understand?" So these were the scraps, the crust, the leftovers, the remnants on the floor. There was an abundance of food. I want to ask us, do we get it? Do we understand? It's not just about marveling at his miracles and these expanding picnics and the physical kind of things that we see, but it's an issue of the heart. It's an issue of our faith. This is right at the center of these stories. It's our faith in who Jesus is. That he alone is the only spiritual food each one of us needs. That even a few crumbs from the bread of life, a few crusts held in the hand of the bread of heaven for us is all we need. It's transformative. It's life-changing. It can set us free, as we've seen, from controlling spirits in our life. It can heal us from physical affliction. But bigger than that, we know that the ultimate healing is actually a spiritual one. He can set us free and cleanse us from the control of sin in our lives. He can forgive us of our sin. He can set us free. We'll be demonstrating that he cleanses us. He gives us newness of life. The physical healing of this man in this story, I think actually just helps represent something that's going on spiritually when we come to faith. We have our ears opened to the truth. The man had his ears opened. When God brings faith to us, he opens our ears so we can hear the truth. And then the man's mouth was opened. And it says, our mouths are opened so we can confess. What do we confess with our mouths? That Jesus Christ is Lord. This is a spiritual thing that's happening that we can see in this story. So is our faith like the disciples that follows him, but as soon as a barrier comes or a challenge or something comes, we start doubting, we have questions, we're unsure, we retreat. How are we going to feed these people? Do we lose hope? So after these massive, large-scale picnics of the 5,000, the 4,000, 12 and 7 baskets were gathered up afterwards. Just of the scraps, all the crusts, all the crumbs. And these were the things that this Gentile woman was after. He said, I know I wasn't supposed to be here, but I see something. If I get something from Jesus, it's going to change everything. A crust or a crumb, a leftover, still has the same life-giving properties within that bread. A word, a look, a touch from Jesus can still transform any life. It can heal, it can restore, it can set free anyone. The woman expresses her complete faith in Jesus' ability to heal, even through just a crumb. Even through a crumb, that would be sufficient power to restore her daughter. So that was recognize him as the bread of life. We've talked many times about communion, taking bread and wine, and how significant that is. It's more than just a tradition. This represents how we can receive and eat and feed and believe on the bread of heaven. Okay, thirdly, let go of pride. Let go of pride. We all like to be dignified, respected, in control, don't we? We do. We don't want to be made fools of. We want to feel like we're successful, got it together. Like Liam said, we're seeking those things, whether it's through being aggressive or being successful in business, or we want to be respected, don't we? I heard of a story just this week of my 4-year-old grandson, a child in his class, when they had the school visit, when they were at nursery, and the nursery school, the reception teachers go and visit the families in their homes. And this little 4-year-old said, "Mummy, I want to put a suit on." So he had a suit for some reason, maybe for a wedding or something, and he had a suit, sat there in a suit before the teachers came in. But I think there is all a little bit like this. We want to be respectable, don't we? We want to be dignified. We want people to have the right impression of us. It's cute, isn't it? I keep seeing these T-shirts with saying the words, "I'm enough," across the front. And actually, we need to come to the point and realise that we're not enough. We're actually not enough. We're sinful dogs. We're wretched. I got the song wrong. I thought we were doing Amazing Grace, Save a Wretch Like Me. We didn't. It's another one. It was a very good one, but I was going to reference it. It doesn't really work now. But you know that one. Amazing Grace, Save a Wretch Like Me. We're not enough. We're in need of a saviour. We're in need of someone to step in and scoop us up and give us a new life. In both stories of the woman and of the man, I don't know if you noticed, but they begged. They begged Jesus. Begging. A begging person is someone who's let go of their pride. If they're on their knees with a face down, repeatedly asking for help, they've let go of pride. And that is where it starts with us, friends. We need to realise that we're in need of help. And then we need to realise who we need to go to for help. Kneeling and begging is the posture of someone who has let go of pride. This woman fell at his feet. He begged him to lay his hand on him when the man came before him. So both stories confront head-on the central kind of heart problem of mankind. Pride, self-righteousness, self-importance, ego, or biblically we call it sin. It's all the same stuff. Sin. And in our story, it appears that Jesus confronts these things, both by kind of being rude, calling the woman a dog, and disrespectful to the man. He spat in his face. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're ever speaking to someone and they're a little bit flamboyant, a bit exuberant with where they talk, and a little bit of spit, and it might just land on your face, sometimes even worse, on your lip. It's disgusting, isn't it? You're horrified and you're offended. Is that just me? Is anyone... You're all going to be speaking like this now, aren't you? No, but it's disgusting, isn't it? It's offensive. But here, Jesus spits on his hand and wipes it on this guy's tongue. Now, in any culture, that is just disgusting. It's offensive. You'd be offended if anyone did that to you this morning, wouldn't you? I would be offended if you came and did it to me. Please don't. But it draws out something in these two people. They aren't offended. Are you offended at God? I think in these stories, they both had reason to be prickly and defensive. But they didn't. They drew close. Jesus drew out extraordinary humility and faith in these two people. In Matthew, in the same account, Jesus actually says, "O woman, great is your faith." I want you to pause for a moment and think, if you feel like you have been offended by God, maybe you can feel a bit like Liam's dream, or that scripture. And it says that he's hid his face from you just for a moment. And you feel offended by that. You feel like he's quiet, he's distant. Maybe you've been subjected to different suffering in your life by others, by illness, even by place of birth. Maybe you have unmet life expectations and you're angry and you're offended by God. I want to tell you this. The enemy will do everything in his power to use that, to keep that barrier between you and God. I was going to bring a fence in today, just as visual, but it was so old and grotty, this fence, that it would probably fallen apart in my hands. But I was going to bring... So it's a play on words. A fence. You feel like you're offended by God and you're holding up a fence. It's a barrier. And I was going to write across it all these things that we might be offended by God. in. When you're offended, you hold your hands up and you turn away, and you're not coming quickly. You're retreating. The opposite is someone who's let go of pride. The hands are open, the head is down, they're kneeling down, and they're moving forward. Faith steps in, fear retreats. Offense steps away. Here we see, despite maybe having questions or pain, their faith humbly meant that they said, I trust you. So if this woman or this man had been offended from the words or the spit or the way Jesus did, if they had been offended and retreated, what would have happened? I'd imagine nothing would have happened. They wouldn't have received their healing. They wouldn't have received their restoration. Freedom wouldn't have come to them. In the passage, the woman doesn't seem offended at all or attacked, but actually agrees with Jesus. She says, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. She could have said, you're referring to me as a dog? And then just started hurling abuse at Jesus. Rather, she said, yeah, if I'm a dog, I'm going to be a dog with a bone, and I'm not going to let go of this. I'm going to keep pursuing this. Even the dogs get their crumbs, and I want a crumb. Even if the word was meant for someone else, she was happy to receive it, just as we heard this morning. When I said Liam, I was talking about another Liam. But Liam wasn't offended and said, oh, actually it wasn't for me. Forget this. That wasn't a real sign. No, he received it and said, no, Jesus is speaking to me. He's saying, come, Liam, follow me. He wasn't offended. Graciously, humbly came and said, yes, I'm going to receive that as my sign that Jesus wants me. Now, it may be a bit of a stretch in this passage, but I kind of saw some parallels with Jesus at this time on the cross. And so this passage could even point towards our Saviour being spat on and receiving abuse. At the crucifixion, it says they mocked him and spat on him. Could it be a reminder to us that we, when we follow Jesus, need to take up our cross and follow him? And with that comes shame and offence, just as it did for Jesus. So let's be a people that when our faith is tested, we don't back off. We're not offended. We don't question his love. We let go of our pride. And we pursue and seek out Jesus. Fourthly, humbly ask for help. Notice in the story, it wasn't actually the people that received the healing that came in the first place. It was the mum of the daughter, the young daughter, and it was the friends of the man who begged on their behalf. Maybe a bit later we'll consider people that you want to bring to Jesus, who you want to beg to Jesus on their behalf for a miracle. Maybe it's a member of a family, a neighbour, a friend who needs just a crumb from the hands of Jesus to receive their miracle this morning. Maybe we should do that a bit later. Another thing to note about this woman, she did it repeatedly, she asked. In Matthew of this account, she said, when she was begging, saying, have mercy on me, it says that Jesus didn't respond, he was silent. It says, but he did not answer her a word. Again, Jesus was silent. And then she knelt and said, Lord, help me. So she didn't just ask once. It's something about repeatedly begging and asking and letting God see your faith and desperation to receive something from his hands. We can learn something about persistent prayer, not giving up too easily. Her persistent prayer released the power of God. persistent, patient, persevering faith expressed through regular praying, I believe moves the heart of Jesus. I believe it does. And we'll see his power released amongst us. I'm going to now show you a video of... so this was in Lebanon, this story, in modern-day Lebanon. And about 300 miles north, east, is Syria. And someone in our group of churches went to Syria earlier in the year. And he visited a few people. I'd just like you to see some stories of him visiting some homes, just like we read today in Lebanon. He's visited some homes, and this is what he encountered.
In this remote village, we visited new arrivals from Hasake. A family of 8 is staying in one room. The 16-year-old daughter was dead unhappy because she was not allowed to continue her education at state school. We assisted the family so that the daughter was able to continue her education. After that, we visited a family of 5. The father left the family several years ago. Since then, the whole weight of life lies on the mother. The building was cold and dark, no electricity. Although the stove was burning, the room we were sitting in was ice cold. When the previous tenants moved out, they took the door with them. In spite of all those difficulties, the little girl wanted to sing a worship song for Jesus. She did this with a gleam in her eyes, and the face seemed to shine as if she needed nothing else in this world but Jesus in her heart. We called a craftsman who took the measurements. The next day, the door had been fitted. Our next visit took us to yet another freezing cold flat because there was no money for heating oil nor for anything else. The mother was sitting on the floor and couldn't get up to greet us because of severe back pain. The pain was so intense she couldn't even move her leg. She told me that her husband was in the process of leaving her and was therefore rarely at home. He only brought food home when he wanted something to eat himself. The sense of hopelessness was overwhelming, and faced with the extent of their misery, I felt helpless. And yet, I believed that Jesus wanted to help this family, so I offered to pray for the woman. Shortly after my prayer, she stood up, bent over twice, and touched the floor with her hands, exclaiming that she was now pain-free. She went straight to the kitchen to prepare tea for us. On that day, the glory of God appeared to this family. Encouraged by this healing miracle, my translator urged me to visit another family who had lost a daughter in a swimming accident just over a year ago. Since then, the family had completely withdrawn from life and were trapped in a deep depression. The father greeted me warmly, but then he seemed distant and barely responded. A spirit of grief and death had taken hold of this family. There, too, I was able to offer pastoral care and pray for deliverance. And indeed, the atmosphere changed completely. The father picked up his saz and began to worship God passionately. Hallelujah.
What a beautiful story. Jesus is very much alive and crossing borders across this world. And as we saw there, he's doing that now. And he wants us to do the same. We have the bread of life, and he wants us to carry that and bring it to people. No one is outside the love of God. I mean, in our story, Jesus travelled for days. And it doesn't actually... There's no other kind of incidents, just this one up in Tyre. So maybe he travelled just for that one woman and that man. And he wants us to travel across borders to meet those that need Jesus. And I think that the biggest border to travel across is the border in our hearts of pride. And I want us to consider, is he calling us? Does he want to cross the border in our heart? Will you come quickly to Jesus, the bread of life, Let go of pride and humbly ask for help. In Romans 1:16 it says this, Paul says this, "For I am not ashamed of this good news about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile." So you may have come here this morning and thought, this isn't really for me. I'm maybe coming for Liam, or just someone's brought me here. So I'll let them say what they want to say and then I'll go. But I go back to that original picture. I want you to think that we're at a banquet here and someone's going around with some hors d'oeuvres, or I like to call them horstoofs. And there's a beautiful food on the tray. And you got a late invite to come to this banquet. And one of these has just rolled off onto the floor. And it's still standing upright. It's not. And it's right down at your feet. And would you swallow pride, pick it up, and take it for yourself? Do you understand the picture I'm trying to paint here? This may not have been for you, but there's something that you've heard, some living bread, some words of truth that are available to you this morning. And you say, I want some of this. It may not have been for me, but I'm going to take it and receive it and believe in it for myself. We're going to close there. Thank you for your patience. But as I said, maybe you want to call out to Jesus, beg for Jesus, for someone in your life, that they may receive this bread of life, that they may receive a miracle for themselves.